Hello, welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is Great Big History Podcast, world history from 1450 till almost yesterday. Life, the universe, and the Reformation. So the Reformation, from roughly 1500 to 1648, though there are instances of protest against the Catholic Church earlier than 1500, and there is still religious fighting after 1648. But it gives us at least a time frame. But the real question about the Reformation is who controls knowledge. Is it the traditional, responsible church who is in charge of knowledge and responsible for doling it out to people in acceptable quantities? Or is it a humanist, independent individual? Where is authority located? Is it in the institution or is it in yourself? And that's a major change because ever since we've talked about the Roman Empire, we've gone 1,000 years and knowledge is in institutions. The emperor, the church, the university, right? The idea that a pig farmer would have an opinion on stuff is like on philosophy is just no. Individuals were just not that important. The family, right? You weren't even independent within your own family. You had a hierarchy of elders there. You had in feudalism, or whatever medievalists would like to define feudalism as today, there's a hierarchy. As Bob Dylan has a song, everybody's got to serve somebody. So the idea that an individual mattered is revolutionary. And that's where Martin Luther comes in. That's why Martin Luther was so important, because he's going to emphasize that individuality. So in 1517, he's a German monk. And he's not a very happy German monk. And there's a lot of stories about how he became a monk. None of them are he loved the monkhood so much he just had to be a monk. So he's a guy who's already a curmudgeon. In his own telling, as I understand it, he was in a thunderstorm and it was right above his head. And if you've ever had dogs, when thunder happens and it's really close, it's frightening. And he prayed to God, get me out of this and I will become a monk. His Catholic opponents, of course, said, yeah, sure, a thunderstorm is what you needed to be saved from. Monks take a vow of celibacy. And here's a guy saying, if you get me out of this situation, I'll never do it again. Sure there, Luther. Sure it was a thunderstorm. And, this is his opponents saying that. But to give his opponents just a little bit of credit, when Luther finally did break with the Catholic Church, one of the things he said in what became Lutheranism was that priests and monks could get married, and so could nuns. And the first thing he did was marry a nun. To which his Catholic opponents just their heads exploded. They're like, come on, this guy only wants to he's breaking up the Catholic Church to get a little something something. Come on. You guys can't be serious. This guy? So, whatever Luther's motivations, I don't know. But I always like a little bit of dish gossip in history. We cannot say he wasn't a towering intellectual. That he was. Racist? Anti-Semitic? Oh, yeah, in both. We have what's called I think it's the tabletop readings. Basically, by the end of his life, he had gotten so famous, acolytes just followed him around, writing down everything he said, like it was gospel. And he had a lot to say about people. He didn't like a whole lot of people at the end. But what he does write is the 95 Theses. Luther had 95 problems, and the Pope was definitely one. Now, the 95 Theses wasn't a declaration of independence, though it kind of takes that form a little bit. It is not quite the breakup letter the Declaration of Independence is, but it is also a list, 95 things, of what the church needs to reform. So he's not quite breaking with the church, but he's wants to end the corruption of the church, which corruption should be put in quotation marks because that's how he sees it. He wants to end Italian decadence and control over the church. He's a German, and yet what he sees are all these Italians sipping their cappuccinos in German monasteries and German churches, telling Germans how to live the good life. They don't speak German. They're not really involved in helping the people because they're second or third sons of wealthy businessmen back in Italy, and the kids need a job. And so priest is a good job, and you could call in a lot of favors. And so he just looked at all of this and said, come on, this isn't real Christianity. We need to get back to real Christianity. And remember, the people who are going to come to Massachusetts, to Plymouth, they're going to leave from Plymouth and arrive in Plymouth, call themselves the Puritans. So the British are going to take on that feeling of like returning to a real Christianity. These are revanchists. These are arch conservatives, even though they're going to be revolutionary as well. They're kind of the horseshoe. They're going to go all the way. And so to find real Christianity, well, Luther does. It's the Bible. You need to read the Bible. You could find your own way to heaven. You don't even need these corrupt Italian priests. That's the most insulting part to Luther. He's like, they're just leading you astray. They're not helping you get to heaven. The whole point of life is to suffer, kind of Buddhist, so you could get to heaven. It's a test to get your soul into heaven. And the church, the Catholic Church, has taken on its role through sacraments and through the weekly mass to guide you there. It says, you peasant, you uneducated person, don't worry, we got you. We're here. We have read the Bible. We have studied the Gospels. We know our Plato and Aristotle. We know our Greek writings and philosophies. We've got Aquinas. We got Thomas Aquinas and his books, the Summa Theologica. We have St. Augustine, right? We've got you covered. We can get you into heaven. Well, Luther's a smart guy, and he's looking at these Italian priests who aren't very dedicated, who aren't very smart, who are just in it for the money. And he's like, these guys aren't helping you. These guys are lying. They don't know anything. And so he starts writing and writing and writing. And this happens to be around about 50 years after the invention of the printing press. And the printing press allows for one-page summaries. See, the printing press really isn't good at books. Books are hard. Just the process. You have to put every letter down backwards, and you have to put them in the right order. You have to make sure you have the right spaces. You have to have the right punctuation, and they're going to leave a lot of punctuation out because all of this stuff is expensive. You have to do it. Then you have to slather it up in ink. Then you have to press down, and that's one page. Now you got 900 pages to go if you're going to make a Bible. Plus, you have to print. You have to make all the woodcuts for the art, but one page. The printing press is really, really good as a photocopier. And that's what gets out. These one-page summaries. Luther would have been awesome on TikTok or Twitter, something short, and he's able to put these questions into people's minds who are like, wait a minute, Luther says you're wrong, Italian priest. Tell me you're right. Prove to me you're right, and tell me how Luther's wrong. And the Italian priest is like, I don't know. I'm just here to eat my drink and my cappuccino. I don't understand. What is transubstantiation? I don't know. I'll call my papa. He'll buy me a Ferrari. Please. So the idea is, you don't need priests. People can find their own way to heaven. You can be in charge of your own soul. And that's huge, because that is pro-humanism. You are the most important actor in your life. Now that's a revolution. That is revolutionary, because nobody we talked about up to this point feels that way. Nobody. Not an Egyptian peasant, not a Roman legionnaire, nobody, not a crusading knight. No, Deus vult, God wills it. As Shakespeare writes, all the world is a stage, and we are merely players. Who made the stage? Who wrote the script? Who got you the costumes? Who put you on that stage? It's all God. Or the church. Or these big institutions. Wars were not fought between individuals. They were fought between two kings and their homeboys. So the idea that you, the human person, is the most important actor in your life is revolutionary. It also means you can understand how the universe works. And that's the birth of the humanities, which, as one who teaches in the humanities, is stunning that colleges and universities in the 21st century want to kill the humanities for STEM. They're like, oh, the humanities don't matter. They're exactly how you understand the universe. Computer science is going to help you understand the nature of your soul. Business is not going to help you understand the quantities and qualities of good leadership. History does. We've got replete with innumerable winners and losers, bad guys and good guys. Business can tell you who made more money, which is not always the best thing. As Ecclesiastes, the book of Ecclesiastes tells us, what does it benefit a man to win the whole world and lose his soul or his head? We're going to get to the revolution. A lot of people lose their heads. So the Reformation is pro-humanism and the humanities, that people can understand themselves, their role in the universe, and how the universe works. And all of this is made necessary by the discovery of the New World, that the Bible isn't everything. You can't give people the Bible and say, that's all you need. There is no America in the Bible. It's going to take the Mormons. And I went to college up in Western New York. I've been to Palmyra. I've been to where the great tablets, the golden tablets, have been found. Right? But it took the Mormons to be like, yeah, it's a little embarrassing that the Savior of the world was born in the Middle East. And the discovery of the New World means there's 2 continents, millions of people, billions of animals that no one had ever seen or thought about before. Everything we could know is wrong, because the discovery of the New World proves we don't know everything. Which is why the atheist is like, shouldn't be an atheist, should at least be agnostic. I'm not trying to promote anything, but the idea that I am certain there is no, dude, people weren't certain that there were 5 continents or 7 continents. They didn't know half the world was there or what was in it. So, like, to say I know is like taking the pro-humanism to like the millionth degree, like beyond, you know. But the discovery of the New World blew people's minds because there's nothing in any of the Greeks, in any of the Romans, in any literature, anywhere that anyone could pick up on, that anyone could rely upon, and any knowledge anywhere that could explain how two continents existed and nobody knew about it. So you have to have new knowledge. You had to find new knowledge. The discovery of the New World forced people into thinking differently about the world. Now, the biggest problem is that most people can't read. Most peasants don't have any education beyond what's practical. We talked about this at the end of History 101. They're farmers, so they need to know farming. They have goats and cows and horses, and so they need to deal with how to make more of those. These are not dumb people. They're not educated people. Formally, scholarly, academically educated. So most people can't read. And then people being people, they make stupid choices. Like, they just do. Like, you had to come to class. You had to drive on roads to class. You did not come to my class without seeing half a dozen people do something stupid. And that was on a 20-minute car ride. You see people, you know stuff that you can think about and go, oh boy, that was dumb. Right? People make stupid choices. So can you really trust them with your soul? Really? That's their soul. Their eternal soul. And Luther's not getting rid of hell. So the thing is Luther thought people would think the same way as him. He was a smart guy. He read the Bible and said, ha, I have found the answers. If I give them the Bible, if I give them at least the New Testament, they'll read it. They'll come to the same conclusions. And they'll be like, oh, Luther, you're so smart. And that's not what happened. It immediately broke apart. People immediately called BS on Luther. You got Protestants of Lutheranism. So you have Luther is a heretic to the Catholic Church, but then you've got other heretics, the Puritans being one, of Luther. So I had a professor in college who was a Russian historian. And she liked to tell this story that she was doing her archival research and she was talking to an old woman. This is when it was still the Soviet Union. And the woman was a Orthodox Christian. She was Orthodox. Now, the Orthodox Church had broken away from the Catholic Church in, around, 1070 or so, give or take. But in the deep Middle Ages. And of course, the Orthodox think they're right. They're based on Constantinople. They think they are pure. That that they have it right, and that the Catholics are the heretics. So she asked, "Well, what religion do you follow?" And my teacher said, "Oh, I'm a Lutheran. I'm a Protestant." And the woman asked, "So how is it to be a heretic of a heretic?" Which is to say, what does it feel like to be so completely wrong? You got to laugh at that. So Protestantism immediately breaks apart. It's protests. So the protesters don't stop protesting with one protest. And so authority as a concept loses all control over people's thoughts. And then there's the problem that there's stuff people don't want to lose. Like Luther is all like, I've got the word, and the word is God, and the word is good, right? But the Catholic Church has cool stuff. It's got holidays. It gives you days off because those are feast days. It gives you Christmas. It gives you Easter. It gives you confession. So you could say sorry for all the stupid mistakes you made, and you get wiped away with say a couple prayers and don't do it again. And you're like, okay, I won't do it again because it was dumb. Right? You get community. The church is the biggest place in town. In many towns, it was the only place built of stone. It is also a collector and creator of art, of music. Just look at Handel's Messiah. Of news. Your weekly news came from the pulpit. Jobs. All right, you've got these priests. And they're Italian priests. They like to drink their cappuccino. Who do they buy their cappuccino from? You're in a little town in Germany. You got to have a wholesaler who can get it from the Italians, who are getting it from the Near East, from the Arabs, right? You need businesses. You need someone to get the silks. You need someone to buy the incense. You need to make furniture for these guys. You need paper and pens. You need candles, an unending supply of candles, right? And cool candles, artistic candles, because there's different seasons. So you have to be in different colors with different scents, right? With different graphics on them. Like, there's people who have to clean the churches. The Catholic Church also owns land, farms. So you need people those are jobs, right? Beer. You can't, I am part Irish. You cannot have Catholic priests and not have beer. Well, no. Because they have to fast, right? What Guinness is, the bread beers, the big, thick stouts, were originally beers for monks when they were fasting. They weren't allowed to eat food, so you have these big, heavy, but light on calorie. There's not a lot of sugar in them. They're light on calorie beers that would fill you up. Interestingly, they're not a lot of calories, and they're not that heavy on the alcohol, because that's not their job. Because you don't need, first of all, if you have nothing in your stomach, you don't need much, right? But the idea of it was there are specialty made beers just for these monks. Also, charity. Who's going to take care of the poor and the old? Who? That was the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church's job was to take care of widows and orphans, right? The poor, the unemployed, right? It was there to help people. It had all of this money. It justified it by helping people. If you absorb the church land, if you get rid of the church, if you get rid of the monks, if you get rid of the priests, who's going to take care of who? The king? Why would he do that? He's never done it before. He doesn't run charity organizations. He runs a military organization. So who's going to take care of the poor and the old? Who's going to forgive your sins? The Catholic Church gave people cool stuff. And that's hard to break with by handing them a book that they can't read. So then why do we care? Like, this is an academic fight. So why do we care? And the answer is because it went political and ultra-violent. Luther was branded a heretic. That he was the one who was leading people astray. He was damning people's souls. Charles V. Remember, Charles V. This is the King Charles of Spain and Germany that had the Valladolid debate about slavery and how to treat the Native Americans, right? He has one on Luther. Now, he promises, and I'll give Charles this, he promised safe passage for Luther, that he wanted an honest debate. So he promised Luther, you will not be arrested, you will not be attacked, we will not kill you. We want to hear, as king of Europe, and the French king would, of course, object to that, but as the king of Spain and Germany, I want to hear what you have to say. So I don't want to hear it through intermediaries. I want to hear you answer questions. And I'll decide, and we'll decide if you're a heretic or not. He gets branded a heretic. He goes into hiding. The Duke of Saxony kidnaps him, quote unquote, kidnaps him and puts him into hiding. To save his own skin, Luther leans in on revolution, basically. And it makes sense. Like, dude, I'd do the same thing. Like, he's not dead. He's not, Wycliffe. He's not one of these revolutionary reformers who gets his head cut off and burned at the stake. He's Martin Luther, founder of Lutheranism. And his big revolutionary act, the thing that is going to erupt in Europe, is the idea that kings don't have to listen to the Pope. Now, there was fights over this from the beginning of a pope, of who's in charge of who. In a hierarchy, are kings below the pope or a pope below the kings? And what they kind of came to is they're kind of frenemies. They're kind of equals, and the pope can tell kings to do things, and the kings can occasionally tell popes to do things, and like they kind of have to learn to live with each other. It's a popularity contest. When the people like you more than the other, you can do what you want. But if they like the other more than you, you're in trouble. So there's always this balance, right? And that's kind of, they decided not to decide. But now Luther's deciding. He says, kings, the leaders of a realm don't have to listen to a pope. So what several kings start to do is stop sending money to the church. Just like, hey, the largest landowner in my country is the church, is the Catholic Church. And they don't pay any taxes. Do you know how rich I could be if I just collected that and paid and had the people pay taxes? I'd be the richest guy in my country. And so not only do they stop sending money to the church, they nationalize the church land. And this happens in the Netherlands, in northern Germany, in Scandinavia. You get national churches, the Church of Sweden, the Church of Denmark, Church of England later, but yes. And the idea is what they do is they nationalize the church and then absorb all the church land and say, it belongs to me. It belongs to the king. And then the king can sell it. And that turns out to be a huge motivation for a whole lot of people to become Protestant. Because the king needs money. So he's willing to sell that land, which he got for free, fairly cheap. Or at least at a discount, right? He's not going to negotiate real hard. There's things he's going to keep for himself. The big things he'll keep for himself. But a lot of the pieces, little monasteries here, little monasteries there, some farms, he's going to sell those off to lords for quick money. But those lords now have to agree that the king is in charge of the religion in the realm. Otherwise, they're buying illegal land. See the thing? And now they need the people underneath them, the farmers who they're going to put on that land, who they're going to lease that land to. Those people are also going to have to agree because they're going to either lease it or maybe buy it from the Lord, right? So the king absorbs 5,000 acres, right? He's got 5,000 acres he doesn't need. So he sells it to, Duke Gennari. Right? Duke Gennari. Me. He sells it to me. Right? Well, now I'm a Protestant because now my wealth, I've paid good money for this land. I can't let the church just take it back. I can't give it back. I'm out of money. So now I'm a Protestant. I agree that the king is awesome and that the king is head of the church. Great. And now I need to make money on that land that I just bought, that 5,000 acres. So I lease out at 100 acres apiece to farmers who need land. And since I need to make money off this land, I'm going to rent it fairly cheaply, right? Just so I get some income going. But now, for that farmer to now rent, and hey, if they want to pay up front, if they got the money, they could buy it. They could buy that 100 acres. I'm cool with that. I get more money up front then, right? But be that as it may, they're now going to be Protestant. Why? Because they're benefiting from the stolen church land. They don't want to give it back. They would lose money. So by nationalizing church land, but then not hoarding it, by giving it out, by selling it off, you bought other interested parties in the process. And so what we'll see, and England is a perfect example of this, is a lot of the conservatives, the big landed estates who were already rich, don't want to become Puritan, don't want to become Anglican. They don't want to be Protestant. They want to stay Catholic. They want to stay in touch with the church because they were benefiting from that relationship. They had monks on their land, right? They had a monastery that people were paying money to go to, right? They benefited. So they become very conservative. They don't want to change. We'll see this in France. We'll see this in Spain and Italy. The most conservative spaces remain Catholic. While the ports, the diversity places, the places where you had to make money and you didn't have a lot of land wealth, you were moving and you were shaking in the Netherlands and in Germany and in Scandinavia, are going to become Protestants. Well, the Pope can't just let this happen. They're stealing the land from the church. So the Pope calls on his allies to wage war on the Protestants, save the church. And the King of Spain and the King of Spain and Germany, because Charles V is allied to the Pope. But also the King of France is like, hey, I get to attack these guys and take their land. That's nice. And so you get wars now between Catholic and Protestant kings. Ha-ha! And then what happens? Well, dukes declare their independence from kings, because what are kings doing when they're going to war? They're raising taxes. And now you've got dukes who are saying, no, I don't like this. Or they're like, no, I can benefit from this by rejecting, because the Pope is putting out the call to any Catholic. We'll figure out the money later. If you wage war on Protestants, if you destroy Protestants, you'll make money. The Catholic Church will get you into heaven and get you rich. So if you're a duke in Bavaria, you've now got an interest in waging war on those wimpy Protestant dukes in central Germany. Ha! But then the peasants declare independence from the dukes, because the dukes are like, why do I have to pay taxes to the king? Well, the peasants are like, why do I have to pay taxes to the duke? And so you've got war everywhere, all the time. And by 1648, you have something like 20 to 30 million people dead. It's war everywhere, involving everyone. There's a tour I want to do called the Burning Down Germany Tour. It's the tour of the Swedish Army from 1630 to 1648. Basically, it'll take me all over Germany. If I do this, the Gustavus Adolphus tour, it'll take me through large parts of Poland and Germany and central Germany. It'll take me all over the place, from the 1620s through the 1630s. And the Burning Down Germany tour includes, actually, in the 1640s, Denmark. So, like, I'll see a whole lot of Europe that the Swedes burned down. That's bad if you lived in that part of Europe when the Swedes came through. So, is the church going to just let this happen? A 1,500-year-old Italian church is just going to let a bunch of German Protestants break up everything? No. The church is going to rickroll Europe. It is never going to give you up. It is never going to let you down. It is never going to run around and desert you. It's the church. So the church strikes back. The Holy Father, Counter-Reformation. Do, 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 do. Right? We're going to have the Inquisition, which is the first time thoughts become a political crime. That you didn't actually have to be a Protestant or do Protestant stuff. You just had to be thinking Protestant thoughts. The Inquisition also allowed for violence. To save souls is okay. This is different than a crusade. The crusading spirit makes sense here, right? The Crusades the Reconquista had just ended in 1492. This is the next generation, 1520. And so it makes sense that violence is seen as okay. But the Inquisition was trying to find enemies within. And those enemies within, well, they're not going to tell you they're an enemy. They're going to lie. And so you had to use violence to find out the truth. But the thing about the Inquisition, the thing about torture, and why torture is bad, is that you never know if it's the truth. There's a great scene in Reservoir Dogs where Harvey Keitel is talking, I think, to Tim Roth. And they're going to rob, I think it's a diamond jewelry store. And they're going to rob the diamonds. And Harvey Keitel tells Tim Roth, well, what you do is you get the manager and you ask him a question. And then you cut off his pinky. You could survive without a pinky. It's going to hurt, but you can survive without a pinky. But now he knows you're serious. Because you really didn't care what the answer was. You cut off his pinky. Okay, great. Now you threaten his thumb. And man, you can't do much without a thumb. So he'll tell you anything you want to know. That's how torture works. They might be telling you the truth. They might also be telling you what you want to hear in order to get the torture to stop. So what it does is it approves of conspiracies. If you think a town has 100 Protestants in it, you'll find 100 Protestants. You might find 500 Protestants. You might find the entire town is full of Protestants. There's a famous quotation from the Vietnam War. We had to destroy the town in order to save it. That's the mindset of the Inquisition. We have to destroy the thought of Protestantism. And they wanted to destroy the thought through violence. You know, and so that's the same problem of the people who want to ban books, who want to ban LGBT, books, who want to ban gay and trans books. Thinking, well, if we don't have the books in the library, no one will be gay. Kids won't know to be gay. Like, that's just not how it's going to work. It's just not. They're going to find out other ways. They have a phone with all of the information of the entire world and the history of the world on it. Parents they don't want their kid to go to the library, but then they hand them an iPhone with Reddit on it and TikTok on it. So you're not going to be able to police a person's thoughts. You're just not. The Inquisition proves you're not. Okay. So that's the violent part. But there's also the cool parts. The church has money. And so it spends it on art and music. The Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo, Raffaello, you go into any church, go into the Jesu with its Aztec gold in the artwork. The ceilings are painted like the sky, right? The Duomo opens up to heaven, right? The dome of the Duomo, you look up and there's heaven above you. You are in a building and yet you look up and there is heaven. There's the sky and the sky has cracked open and there's heaven up there. No one else could do that. In fact, Luther is rejecting that kind of art. He wants you to just have the book. And the book is cool, but it's boring. Now, it's funny because American Protestantism will eventually take on capitalist aspects that will try to sell because there's no official church in America. So every little church has to sell itself to its parishioners. They have to become members, and they can freely choose. You have the capitalistic choice of churches, right? And so you see when you have that, you have music, you have art, you have all kinds of shows. You go to a mega church in Texas, it's like a rock concert with its lighting and its smoke and its performances and its choirs and that's not my Catholic church. My Catholic church is boring compared to that. So, but in 1520, the Catholic Church was cool because it had all the cool stuff. It had all the money. So it wants to now impress people. And you cannot go to the Sistine Chapel and not be impressed. It is impressive. It is blow your mind, melt your eyes, impressive. Right? Also, the Counter-Reformation is going to educate people. It's going to invest in education. This is one of the great things about the Reformation. It doubles down on education. And we're going to get the Jesuits. The Jesuits are going to come out of this. Ignatius Loyola, Loyola, is going to start the Jesuit group of monks as soldiers of the Pope. Like his idea is the problem with Protestants are they don't believe the Pope. They don't trust in the Pope. So the Jesuits are going to trust the Pope. But they're also, and this is important, going to take Luther at his word. They are going to debate Luther. They're going to, remember, we talked about how all those people were like to the Italian local priest, like, hey, can you tell me that Luther's wrong here? And they're like, I don't really know. I can't do it. The Jesuits are like, we've got this. Even today, Jesuits have a lot of PhDs and masters. Like these are highly some of our best schools in the freaking country are Jesuit schools. And it starts with the idea that we can trust the people to understand the truth. On the notes, it should be big T. The truth. We can show that Luther is leading them astray. We can trust people. Where the original idea of the church was, we have this. People should trust us. The Jesuits, on the other hand, say, we will trust the people. We will give them the knowledge they need, and they'll see the Catholic Church is right. Like, the Catholic Church is 1,500 years old. How wrong can it be? And finally, there's the Council of Trent in the 1550s. Now, notice it's 30 years after Luther starts the Reformation, but it's a generation, right? So it's not quick, but it is a generation. And the Council of Trent is this idea that maybe Luther had some points. Maybe he's right. Maybe we are too decadent. Maybe, the idea that we have bishops that have kids and marriages, like just unofficial marriages, but, maybe we should just fix that. And that's important because the Council of Trent is the idea that the church can reform, that it's not infallible. God, infallible. Jesus, infallible. The church can make mistakes. Not on doctrine, and that's where the infallibility of the Pope will come in, but that's 300 years later. But the idea was in its everyday operations, in its way of doing, in the human aspects, it can maybe not be the most up-to-date institution. We'll see this, the most important thing that happened before I was born was what's called Vatican II, where they got rid of Latin. So I've never been, well, I have been to a mass in Latin, but that was a specific one in a high holiday in Rome. So it was a special event. But otherwise, wherever I've traveled, the masses have been in the local languages. And so the idea is that the church can reform. It can change. It can evolve, which is what Luther in 1517 was demanding of it. So it's the idea that maybe Luther had a point. And had it not gone political and had not blown up Europe and killed 20 to 30 million people and invented countries, because the ruler is going to make in 1648, the Peace of Westphalia is basically going to say the king gets to make the religion. And that basically means the king gets to make the laws, which means a king is now in charge of a country. There's no unity of Europe anymore. Maybe they could have all worked it out philosophically if calmer heads and less violence had prevailed. But when you add money to it, money and power, ultimately you end up with violence. And we'll talk plenty about that in the future. So we're going to leave here with the Counter-Reformation trying to put Europe and Catholicism back together, and wars blowing it apart. So thank you. Be safe.